Hi guys, so as I said in this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the questions on the forum. But there was actually only one pretty explicit question on the forum about the relationship between ethics and morality. So I'm going to go ahead and say a little bit about that in this video, and then I'm going to just go ahead and use the forums to respond to some of the other posts that I wanted to say things about. For the purposes of this class, there's not really a difference between ethics and morality. But it is worth pointing out some of the different ways that people do talk about it, although those aren't necessarily salient at all for this class. And in fact, most ethicists or sort of professional ethicists don't take these distinctions particularly seriously. One way that morality gets used a lot in popular culture and sort of just regular everyday discourse is that we tend to think of morality as sort of necessarily absolutist. We think about it related to sometimes Christian mores or Victorian morality or sexual mores or things like that. And so sometimes when people talk about morality, they mean it in that sense, as sort of coming out of the natural law tradition or things like that. And while it's worth being aware that that's a usage that's out there, when I use the term or when any of the authors in the readings use the term, that's not what they mean. And the other way that ethics gets used sometimes is that people will say, well, morality is this really broad thing, and ethics is a much more narrow conception of, say, the principles that are actually accepted and lived by. So people might say, well, there's morality, and then there are individual ethics. And I think that's why people talk about professional ethics, or it makes sense to say something like, well, my ethics are. But for the purposes of our class, when we talk about ethics or morality, all we mean to do is just point out some sort of normative element of what one ought to do, what values are worth promoting, what values are embodied in certain practices, things like that. It's a much broader notion of both ethics and morality.